Hi guys, welcome back to We Should Talk, a pop culture interview series from In the Know. I'm your host, Gibson Johns, and this week on the podcast, we're changing it up a little bit. We have Caroline Vazzana, who is a fashion content creator, TikTok star, influencer, formerly of InStyle and Teen Vogue. She's worn many hats in the fashion industry, and New York Fashion Week just wrapped up here in New York, and so we thought it'd be fun to have her on and talk a lot about her experience at New York Fashion Week, but also just generally in the fashion industry. I mean, again, she's worn many hats, and so, I think a lot of the time we see fashion influencers and content creators post across different platforms, and we never really get to see behind the scenes and hear about, their pain points and then their complicated relationship with the term influencer itself. And so I talked about all of that with Caroline, and it was a really great conversation, and she had some really thoughtful insights, and I just loved our discussion a lot, and I think it's something that everyone follows different content creators on social media, so I think it's something that a lot of people could hear, and I think it's sort of enlightening to hear about the behind the scenes experience of that. So keep listening for my interview with Caroline Vazzana. Follow her across social media platforms. She's easy to find, and check out her book, Making It in Manhattan, which chronicles her journey to where she is in her career. And I think she shares a lot of really awesome advice in that book. And also please rate, review, and subscribe to We Should Talk on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, so we're here with Caroline Vazzana, fresh off of New York Fashion Week. Caroline, how are you? Thanks for coming on.
Good. Thanks so much for having me. So excited to be here, just catching up from all of that New York Fashion Week craziness.
How are you feeling on sort of the come down of it all?
It's always such like a big high and then drop to a low of just nothing. But honestly, I feel like our bodies need that, especially me. And after the past, 2 years we've had of being indoors and then going to something like New York Fashion Week, where it's nonstop seeing people, nonstop conversations. My extroverted energy needs to come back out. So after it's done, I'm like, I need to recharge my battery. I need to go home. I need to watch some Netflix and just snuggle with my cats for a good solid 3 to 5 days.
So are you in hibernation mode right now?
I'm trying to be. I have a couple of things going on, but I'm trying my best to just stay inside this week, relax. I have a couple of projects I have to film and things like that, but thankfully I am, talking to you guys live from my closet, which is where I film everything. So I really don't have to leave too much, which I'm trying to take advantage of that while I can.
I'm happy for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So how much do you pay attention to sort of like the rest of, I guess, what they call Fashion Month? Because obviously things keep going in other cities in Europe. So how much are you paying attention to all that?
Absolutely. I mean, I've been watching on social media, honestly, seeing what brands are posting and what different magazines are posting. I love seeing what's going on. I used to go to Milan and Paris. I miss it so much and I want to go back. I'm hoping for, maybe in the fall. But I used to do both Milan and Paris after New York. So then it was like a whirlwind, and really after that, I needed a full month to recuperate because it was just so much. But definitely, I try my best to stay up to date. I will say this week I've maybe been a little bit lax because I've been in hibernation. But I love, seeing and all the big shows in Europe are just so beautiful. And I feel like those are the ones we all wait for and wait to see.
Absolutely. So before we get too far into it, I'd love to just take a step back and just hear from you just about a little bit more about your background in fashion and in your career. Because I know you've worked for a variety of publications and you're still contributed to different places, but just give us sort of like the rundown on the high level rundown on sort of how you sort of got to where you are, because I know you've kind of touched a lot of different parts of the fashion industry.
Totally. I'll give you guys a super quick version. Otherwise, I could take up the whole podcast giving you guys like an elongated version. But I always wanted to work in fashion. I always loved art and design growing up. And so in college is when I really got to explore that avenue, doing internships and things like that, which after my internships and after graduating college, that's what ultimately led me to my first job, which was at Teen Vogue. And I was the assistant to the fashion director. And it was definitely like the job a million girls would dream of, or however they say it in Devil Wears Prada. But it really was a positive experience, and I did love it so much, and I had an amazing boss. who I'm lucky enough to still be in touch with. And then after being at Teen Vogue, I went to InStyle, and that's where I learned about the digital world because I was writing for InStyle.com. And it was a time where the word influencer did not even exist. It was just blogger, and I was not feeling like I felt, I was a blogger. I did not think I was a blogger. I didn't know what I was. I just knew I had this colorful, crazy style. I wore my big oversized glasses, but I didn't think I was a blogger. So when I eventually ended up leaving my full-time job, I was writing my first book, Making It in Manhattan. And that was kind of an avenue I wanted to pursue, which was opening up the industry, an industry that could feel very, the doors are closed, you can't sit with us, you can't know what's going on or how to make it here. I wanted to draw back the curtain and kind of teach the next generation how to make it, how to get your foot in the door in a very entry level way, like how to get in by someone who's young and who just got in kind of vibe. So left to write my book, kept posting on social media, sharing my daily outfits and things like that, and freelance writing as well for various publications, styling some different celebrities and things like that. And maybe like 5 to 6 months in, landed my first big quote unquote influencer job, which was a digital commercial for Wendy's.
Okay,
And
I love the good place to start.
it sounds so random, but they wanted like a fashion girl like in New York City going about her day and then like getting lunch at Wendy's. So it was literally the perfect project for me. And I do actually eat Wendy's and love Wendy's. So it was all perfect. So after that project happened, it just was kind of like a snowball effect, and more projects and more jobs started coming. And to give a very abbreviated, the rest is kind of history, but that's a very like short, quick, abbreviated version.
Totally. So going back to a couple things in there. One, like, because like you said, the job at Teen Vogue sounds like it's something that a lot of people would dream about having, or start, or a dream place to start,
Yeah.
like that's just like, you can't, that is where people want to start. Was it a connection? Was it reaching out? How did that work for you?
So I interned at Marie Claire. That was my first fashion magazine internship.
Okay.
And that's Hearst, and then Teen Vogue's Condé Nast. So, they're kind of all within the same world a little bit, but my boss at Marie Claire was like, just reach out to every editor. Like when you're about to graduate, email every editor. And I don't know if it's still relevant now, but there used to be an email format for Condé Nast and for Hearst. I don't know if it's still relevant, but there was. So what I did when I graduated was go to like my grocery store. I bought every single magazine I wanted to work at, and I went to the mastheads and I just went down the list and I emailed every single person.
Amazing.
Literally every single person. Got tons of, ghosting. Nobody answered.
Of course, yeah, that's to be expected, right?
Going at the other end. Sometimes I was brought in for just like an informational interview. There was rejection, the typical. Finally, I did get an email back from someone at Teen Vogue. And they were like, oh, in like a month, we think we have a role opening. We'll keep you in mind. But like, I was like, oh, I'm never hearing from these people again. Like, this is it. And funny enough, like a month later, they reached back out and said, oh, that job's open. Do you want to come in for an interview? And as soon as I got my foot in the door, like they couldn't get me out. I was like, I will do. I was like, I will do anything. Like I will mop the floors. Like I just want to be here at Teen Vogue and to work my way up and to prove myself and to pay my dues and stuff in the kind of editorial industry back then.
Yeah. And then when you decided to sort of break out on your own and still contribute and sort of freelance, but kind of pivot and focus more on, influencer type content and things like that, what was the scariest thing about kind of jumping into that? Because I think that's something that a lot of people probably kind of deal with in their mind. It's like, okay, I have this great corporate job that has great benefits and there's sort of a safety net there. But I feel like I might have potential to be out on my own. That's a tough thing to navigate. So what was scariest about that for you?
I think one of the scariest things was at the time I was Caroline from InStyle. So everyone, was like, oh, we want Caroline from InStyle to come to the event. We want Caroline from InStyle to sit front row at Fashion Week. You know what I mean? So I think the greatest fear was like, I'm just going to be Caroline. That's it. Like there's no name behind me. There's no flashy publication. There's no glitz of, ooh, she writes, or she works at InStyle, or she works at Teen Vogue, and there's that like, potential promise of something. It's now having to completely establish yourself as a person. But it was a challenge I was excited about because I worked in a time when editorial was changing so much, and I watched some of my bosses get laid off and have their jobs, taken from them after 10 years of being so-and-so from excuse me,
All right.
from Vogue. I saw all of that happen.
Yeah.
And I, in a sense, I think wanted to just be Caroline, to build my brand as me so that no one could take it from me. No one could one day be like, oh yeah, like we're doing budget cuts, like your job's gone. So it was definitely super scary. And that was my biggest fear, was like, is anyone going to want to work with me? But it was so worth it. And I'm happy, obviously, that I took the risk because it definitely did pay off.
Yeah, of course. And you mentioned something that, I was going to bring up later that I really love about what it's kind of one of your through lines, it seems, like just from doing a deep dive, a lot of the things you post is the kind of the topics that you talk about in your book, in your first book, which is just like, you're not gatekeeping the fashion industry. You're kind of sharing the tricks of the trade, and you're breaking down some of those secrets, and then you aren't shy about, talking about how you broke into it, and it was through persistence and all that. But that's not how a lot of people are in a lot of different industries, but in fashion in particular has a sort of, people think of it as a place that's sort of like, it's hard to get into, it's hard to break into. And I think it's just refreshing to see you as somebody who has made it in that world, but is willing to sort of maybe have people follow in your footsteps. And I think that's kind of cool that you're doing that.
Thank you. That was, one of my biggest goals was, as I'm like sitting at my desk at InStyle, thinking about everything that I'd gone through to get there, I learned so much. There was so much I did not know that I was like, oh my gosh, if someone had just told me that, if someone had just informed me of this certain thing as a 18-year-old in college, you have no idea. If someone could have just told me that, and I was like, well, why not? Let's tell them. Let's help people just
right.
know what's going on and know how to break into the industry in just like a fun, casual, informative way. Like, it's not like you're talking to someone so much older than you and it feels scary. It's like a friend or your best friend's big sister. That's how I always want it to feel. So thank you. That means a lot to me.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's a lot of people that appreciate that and have learned from what you've shared. So I think that's a lot of people are probably grateful for that. And I saw another influencer, I forget who it was, but they posted about, I think it was a TikTok, and they were saying how, like, when they first started out, there's this sort of anxiety that comes with putting yourself out there and posting. And a lot of that anxiety actually comes from like, okay, what are the people closest to my life going to think about this? Right. Like what are they going to judge me for trying to post, content and putting myself out there? And that's really who people worry about, I think, when you first start out. And I'm curious because that's a very real thing that I think a lot of people deal with. So is that something that you had to get over? And sort of, how did you sort of, I don't know, did you adjust your mindset when you were starting to put yourself out there? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's a few things. I think when I started on Instagram, it was earlier on, it was like 2015, 2016.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there wasn't as much judgment, or like people didn't realize, because now the saying is like, I'm going to start posting like an influencer. And that's the mindset of like, oh, I hope my college friends don't judge me because I'm posting like an influencer. The word influencer didn't even exist. I was just posting. I was just me. I was like, here I am, world. Like, I love color and I love, craziness and tutus, and this is me. Definitely like thoughts of, what will people think at times, but I think I was always this exact way. Like, even in college, I was this exact way, and I would wear like crazy colorful outfits to college, and I know people were like saying mean things about me behind my back.
But that's out of like insecurity. And yeah, exactly.
Yeah, like I was in like my college fashion show in like a rainbow sequin dress. And the picture was like ended up in our school magazine, and I like know people made fun of me. Like, absolutely, we're like, making fun of me behind my back. And I did not care at all. I'm like, I'm in the magazine. Like, I made it. Like, I don't care like what anyone thinks. And I
Yeah.
think it was that mindset of I'm meant to do this. Like, I've loved fashion my whole life. I want to do this, and I don't care what anybody else thinks or what anyone else thinks of me. If I love it and I stand behind it and I'm proud of it, that's all that matters. But definitely, I mean, I'm sure there's group chats of girls who I went to college with, not so much anymore that I've like established myself, but definitely in the beginning, probably being like, who does she think she is? What's she doing? But you just got to stay true to yourself and stay true to what you love, and not worry about what anyone thinks.
Totally. And maybe not also like even think about whether those group chats exist or not. Cause like if you haven't seen them, it's like out of sight, out of mind almost.
If you haven't seen it, it doesn't exist. But you know what does exist? Your face in the magazine, or that amazing brand partnership you got, or that fashion week show that you got to sit, and were invited to. Like, that is what exists, and that is what. So, and the girls who are making fun of you, I promise you, are going to reach out to you and ask you for a job one day, because it's happened to me. So don't even
It all comes back around. Yeah, it all comes back around.
It really does. If you put out positive energy into the world, like, that's what you're going to get back.
Totally. And then you've mentioned a couple of times that, when you were starting to post and really kind of cultivate your image online and things like that, the word influencer didn't exist. And I think that word, so I've had other content creators on here before, and I've asked pretty much everyone this. I think it's really interesting because that word is has become such like a loaded term. I think some people think about it really positively, some people don't. And I think that there's a lot of like unfair criticism of, or like, it's just a loaded term. I think there's like connotations that people think about when they think about that word. So I'm curious what your relationship is like to the label of influencer.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I completely agree with you. Like, I feel like to an outside person, like if I meet somebody who's not really in the industry and they're like, what do you do? Like, I'm talking about like someone who's like 20 years old,
right,
in their 20s. And they're like, what do you do? And I start being like, oh, like, I work in fashion, like I do styling and like, creating, and I wrote a book. And then they'll be like, oh, like, do you have an Instagram? Let me follow you. And then they'll be like, oh, you're an influencer. But they think it's cool. They're like, oh, you're an influencer. Like, that makes sense. But then in the industry, I agree, there's like this sometimes negative connotation with like, oh, those are the influencers or whatever it might be. I don't know. I feel like it is a loaded word, and it sometimes is like a badge, like, oh, influencer, like you're an influencer. But I feel like I think I'm more than just an influencer. I guess, like, yes, I'm influencing people's lives and impacting them, whether it's not just to buy something. That's not how I consider it. Like, I'm impacting their entire mindset about their life and the way they live and the way they feel about themselves and the way they dress and about going after their dreams. Like, I like to think I'm like influencing people's lives rather than just being like, shop this shoe. Like,
right.
That's not what this is about here. Like, if people want to buy what I'm wearing, absolutely great. Like, that's why they love following me, is for my fashion. But it's more so for like the inspiration to curate like a colorful, beautiful life that they truly love. So if people want to like say, oh, I'm an influencer, I'll be like, great, sure, thanks. Like, I'm not, if someone else wants to be like, oh, this is Caroline, that author, she wrote that book, or this is Caroline, she's a stylist, or this is Caroline, she's a, fashion editor, whatever it might be, I'm complimented by it. I'm not insulted by it in any way. I think in this industry, I wear so many different hats. So being open to the labels people give me, as long as they, are saying my name, I think it's good,
Yeah. And I think it's you wear many hats, you're a multi-hyphenate. You could, it's like the label doesn't really matter. And I think at the end of the day, what you're doing is like combining a lot of the different experiences that you had previously into one thing. And you're not depending on a bigger, platform or brand to get that out there. It's you're owning your voice. So I don't know. I think it's just about reframing it, I guess, and just
Hmm.
I don't know. People just get so hung up on the term that I think it's
Absolutely.
been interesting to watch that kind of evolve over the years. You know.
Absolutely. I'm waiting for like what the next term is.
Exactly. Exactly.
I joined TikTok, which was like my least recent platform, but is now my biggest platform. People were then calling me, oh, like that TikToker, that TikTok star.
Right.
Like I was referenced in an article as TikTok star. And I'm like, what? I was like, I never considered myself that, but like, okay, cool. Like,
That is one of the things that you are, you know, if you really think about it. Right.
yeah.
Exactly.
So I think it's as long as people are saying your name and it's positive, like that's all you can ask for it,
Right. Exactly. So I've seen you referred to as the modern day Carrie Bradshaw. And
Yeah.
where did that label originally come from? Because I'm just curious.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. So, okay, long-winded, abbreviated story. I've always loved Sex in the City. I think who doesn't?
Yeah,
Like
who
you were
doesn't?
in New York City, like you've obviously seen the show, you obviously love it. I think there was always like some similarities that I was like, oh, like Carrie's real name is actually Caroline, like things like that. Like this necklace, I'm wearing a nameplate necklace. You guys can't see it, but my mom gave this to me when I was literally born. Like this is not like I did not go out and buy this
Right,
every
right.
show. And then I became a writer at InStyle. Like I was a writer in New York and da 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 da. And then I also always, was like had an affinity for fun shoes. And so I remember when I started working at Teen Vogue and InStyle, I actually built a good relationship with the Manolo Blahnik team. They invited me to like my first Manolo sample sale, which I don't know if those even happen anymore,
Oh
but they
my
were
God.
wild. They were like $100 for a pair of shoes. So madness. So I, now I had a bunch of Manolos. I'm a writer. My name's Caroline, different things like that. So I'll never forget the first time it happened. I went to an event and the publicist I was friendly with, she went to introduce me to someone. She was like, this is Caroline. She always dresses so cute. She's like a real life Carrie Bradshaw. And I was like taken back by it. I was like, oh my gosh, like that's so weird. Like, I can't believe someone said that. No one's ever said that to me. That was so nice. I was like, that's nice.
That's very flattering. Yeah,
Very
exactly.
flattering. Then I don't know how much passed, but how much time passed, but I was being interviewed for like some small website. And when they asked me a question, they were like, do you ever feel like you're like a real life Carrie Bradshaw? And I was like, that's so weird. Second time someone said it, right? And I was like, this is weird. So I think around the time I was writing my book and I was talking to my literary agent and I mentioned something about it, she's like, that's great. She's like, that's a great like term.
Let's
Like,
run with it. Right, exactly.
let's run with it. So I slowly started just like using it for press or using it for things here and there. And then I guess it was 2019, I guess, I get an email from Patricia Field's team and they're like, hey, we want to take you for coffee. We have an idea we want to run by you. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. So I go into this coffee like totally blind. I have no idea what's happening. And I had met Pat like once or twice at things. And I think she knew like that the term was floating around and she
Sure.
like was like really cute or whatever. And she's so nice. She's so incredible. So I'm at the coffee and they're like, so Pat had this idea. She is coming out with, she was the one that designed the first nameplate necklace for Carrie in the show.
Mm-hmm.
She's coming out with a new nameplate necklace and we want to call it the Carrie 2.0 and we want to shoot it and do like a big campaign. We were wondering, would you be the face of the campaign?
I
And
mean,
and so that's when it like really got solidified because then Women's Wear Daily wrote about it and like Vogue Italia wrote about it and Glamour and like all these places wrote about it and like featured the campaign. And so that is when it like really like became a tagline, I guess you
yeah.
could say. So yeah, that's
The,
it.
the Patricia Fields cosign on it is really, I
What
mean, that's
did
what you want, right? That's the chef's kiss.
yeah, I mean, once she, I guess, kind of like acknowledged it and not only acknowledged it, but like accepted it, like supported it, and was like,
Right, exactly.
yes, like let's do it. And then like I got to like wear some pieces from the archive, and it was like such a cool like just shoot and moment, and so surreal. So yeah, that's when it became a really big part of my brand.
I love it. Well, that's when it's coming from different places, that's when you know it's like it's not just, that's real. People, that was really a lot of people's perception of what you were doing. And I think it's smart to embrace that because it's a great little
why not?
Why not, right?
It's a great tagline, and it's a flattering tagline.
100%.
I like. So
yeah,
it's worked, and we've just run with it over the years.
Totally. And I watched a video, I think it was, you were doing like a closet 21 questions, something. And I loved it. And one thing that you said in that, which I really picked up on, and I thought was just a really great distinction to make is you said, you want to make sure that, I think it was like advice for people that want to kind of do what you're doing. Right. And I think what you said was like, you want to make sure that you can add to the conversation in the industry that isn't already being done. And I think that's just a great kind of mindset to have if you are trying to break into this. Absolutely. How would you kind of put into words how you thought about that for yourself, either back then or now or whatever? Because I think it's important.
That's my biggest advice when anyone asks me, hey, I want to start social media now. Like now, 2022.
Yeah.
Very oversaturated. Like, what do? I always say, like, what are you adding to this conversation, to, what's happening that isn't being done? And it's hard because how are we going to reinvent the wheel every single time? Like, it's just going to maybe be a little different or whatever it might be. Back in 2015, when I, was kind of starting on this journey, my thought was, I don't feel like career advice is being talked about in like a super relatable, fun, easy way. And no one's just like drawing back the curtain and telling you like, this is how you get an internship. Mm-hmm. This is what you do at an interview, like things that just should be said. So that was my first part of it. And I was like, I feel like there's nothing out here like my book and nothing out here like my website. So I feel like that's it. Then as time passed, I kind of like indirectly realized through my style that was another prong of no one's just like unapologetically like wearing color, but in also still like a high fashion, like,
right,
but mix of high and low way. Like it's either like you see somebody wearing color and it's like super, super expensive and it's like a full, like, I don't know, Prada look, or you see someone wearing color and it's, maybe more on the low side of things, and that's totally fine. But there's no one doing it in like a mixed way that is still cool, doesn't feel like costumey, is wearable, and is accessible to a sense. And I was just doing that without even like, that was just how I dressed at all times. It was just what I loved. It's, maybe it's a Fendi bag with like an H&M skirt. Like it doesn't, there's no thought to it for me. I was like, this is how you dress. Like you just throw it all together.
It's just how your mind works and put things together.
Yeah, it's just how I throw things together. So I started seeing this want and this need and this gap for it more and more. And I think it's funny, like before video content and TikTok and Reels completely changed my entire career and opened me up to an entire new audience of people, because before that, I was just posting pictures, and yeah, it's a beautiful picture here of my outfit, and this is this. But now with my videos, like I can break down the outfit, I can talk about it, I can show people how to put it together and take people along on this journey and give them more insight. And that has just like changed absolutely everything, right? Because I don't think anyone was necessarily doing that either, was doing like TikTok fashion is like a small sector, and TikTok high fashion is an even smaller sector. So I think there again was like another market. So that's what I always say to people, like and it might happen how it happened to me, like indirectly. I went and just career advice was my like line, and then it all just kind of fell together.
Yeah, but it's interesting that the video, I think it's definitely partially because you can explain things and take people through things, but it's also like, it just adds dimension to, it literally adds dimension to just like, and I follow people who they post amazing photos and that's why I follow them. But like, I don't know what their voice sounds like, and I think that that's an interesting thought that like,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely. Like I remember probably like 3 years ago or something before video, I don't talk on stories that much per se.
mhm,
It was never really my thing. Now I talk in video or, really in Reels and TikTok is where you can hear my voice.
sure.
And I did a video one time and someone messaged me and I thought it was the weirdest message was like, "Oh my gosh, it's so cool to hear what your voice sounds like." And I never even thought I was like, "You don't know what my voice sounds like?" Like I felt
Right.
bad. I was
Yeah. Because that just makes it so people can actually, I feel like it adds like to that sort of
connected.
interaction, that parasocial interaction that people have with you.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think for me, like I like being able to sit back, edit, like make it like a cool curated video rather than having to like film myself talking in the moment on a story. So Reels and TikTok has really opened that up for
Sure.
me.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah.
What do you think about like accounts like Diet Prada and other ones and other sort of like watchdog
Mhm.
fashiony accounts? I mean, there's influencer, there's ones that are like directly about influencers who just like are in the game to like find anything to call people out about. And I'm curious, like, as
Yeah.
somebody in a position who like could be like somebody could be like trying to find something to pick apart of yours, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
how do you think about some of those accounts? Because I feel like it just adds to, I don't know, like maybe like like one more thought before you post something or whatever. Like, how do you think about those?
Yeah, like you mean like an account like influencers in the wild or
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah. Or like sometimes influencer type stuff gets on Diet Prada just like because it's like let's break it down and whatever. But I don't know.
yeah,
It must be tough to kind of sort through that.
definitely. Like I think Diet Prada like is doing, I mean, I haven't, to be honest, looked at their account in a little bit, but um they, at least from what I've seen the last time they were doing it, like they're doing a great job in terms of like giving smaller brands and smaller designers a voice and supporting them and like if they're being ripped off or whatever it might be, like kind of giving them a platform where they can be supported. So I think that that's great. In terms of like the influencer aspect, I mean, if an influencer, I feel like Diet Prada really calls you out if you're doing something like wrong.
Completely.
Like if
Yes. Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
copying somebody, if so, like if I was like, and it could have been an accident, obviously, to be honest. But if like I copied someone, like and I didn't give them credit. Like I think the point of TikTok is like you always credit the original inspiration. But if I copied someone and like straight up copied them and didn't give any credit, like I mean, I I think Diet Prada is like holding people accountable.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then there's an account like influencers in the wild, or there's this other account. I don't even remember what it's called, but it's like stuff influencers wear or something like that. And it just
Uh,
like called when like all the girls buy the same thing or whatever it might be. And like influencers in the wild tries to capture you when you're like, I don't know, like taking pictures outside or whatever it might be. I think I try to just like ignore those things and do my own thing and stay in my lane and stay true to who I am. I mean, it can definitely be nerve-wracking because like you don't want to be called out. And I try my best to just like be completely authentic, be me and stay true to myself. Like if I was being called out on like copying somebody or like doing something, I would want to know. I'd be like, did I copy someone?
right.
Like
Sure.
tell me. Like I would love to know, like, especially with TikTok, you credit the creator, but like I feel like it's more than that. TikTok, Die Proud is not calling out people if you didn't just credit the creator. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
calling
Yeah.
out
It's like it's another level up, right?
yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
copied their
Yeah.
collection.
But I
So
feel like, with like the influencers in the wild account, for example, it's like it's almost helpful to take on that same mentality about like the group chats we were talking about earlier, where it's like, you're not people are gonna pick apart anything and
absolutely,
find issue with anything. So just ignore it if you can.
absolutely, absolutely. I mean, with growing a platform, the biggest thing I can tell people is there are gonna be haters. Like
Hmm.
I get hate comments just as much as anybody else does, and I've realized I'm like, "Oh my gosh, if I'm getting hate comments like this, I couldn't even imagine what, like, real, like, celebrities are getting," and I totally, like, sympathize with them because we I get comments about, I don't care if someone says they don't like my style. fine, whatever. But when you start commenting about like personal things on me or whatever it might be, you need to tune it out. Like your Instagram's your safe space, your TikTok's your safe space. Delete, block,
Yeah.
filter comments. Like you need to just protect yourself. And that's, I think, with all things, whether it's an influencers in the wild account or a mean group chat of girls, like I think all of my accounts are my safe space and are filled with so much love from my community and my followers. So when one person comments like a nasty thing, don't even look at it. Delete it right away or block them or whatever it might be, because that just messes with your creativity as well.
Yeah, for sure. It makes you second guess things when you don't, not for a real reason, not for a reason that has merit. So,
Absolutely.
and when you do see that negative thing, it just lives at the top of your mind,
For so long.
It sucks. It sucks.
So long.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's next for you? I mean, I feel like I saw you teasing you might be working on another book at some point. Like what's next in the plan for Caroline?
Yeah, I mean, this past year has been a whirlwind, really. Like, I launched my first capsule collection, which was super exciting and so much fun. And yes, I am working on something literary. I can't say too much. But I think, as I said, like, with the rise of video content, it's opened like so many doors for me as a creative and as a creator. And, lately I've been getting opportunities to host like shopping events and live shopping events and this and that. And so I would love to like, explore hosting or TV or little things like that here and there. I think one of the beauties of being an influencer or a creator on social media is you never know what opportunities are coming your way. And we're just posting and being ourselves every single day and just sharing what we have to say and hoping the right people see it and that you can just continue to share your story with more people. So I think just continuing to, as I said, share my style, share my story, whether that's through a book, through collections, through TV, whatever it might be. Just continuing to kind of share that message of like living a super colorful, authentic, unapologetic life.
I love that. And it's a great place to end. This is a great conversation, and thank you so much for taking the time, because I had a great time talking to you and getting to know you.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks so much.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to We Should Talk. I hope you enjoyed the interview. You can find out more about In the Know at intheknow.com. You can follow me, Gibson Johns, at Gibsonoma on Twitter and Instagram. And you can listen to all of our interviews, past and future, by searching We Should Talk wherever you get your podcasts. Hope to see you next time.